Welcome, brave souls, to another episode of our scary stories. Tonight, we pull back the tattered curtain of reality and peek into the shadowy corners of destiny and fate. Prepare to embark on a haunting journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about life and death, guilt and redemption. Gather close, if you dare, as we delve into an eerie tale titled Echoes from Beyond. Now, dear listeners, turn down the lights, let the chill in the air embrace you, and allow the terror to take hold. Thomas Harding, a man of rationality and reason, peered into the gloomy abyss of the towering haunted mansion before him. The structure loomed like an ancient sentinel, its windows like hollow eyes, a silent testimony to the mysteries it held within. The weathered bricks were soaked with history, covered in creeping vines that seemed to writhe, as if alive. A chill wind rustled through the barren trees, making them groan as if in warning. The mansion was the perfect subject for Thomas's new television series, Mysteries of the Mind, where he aimed to debunk myths of the supernatural. As a seasoned ghost hunter, he had discredited many haunted sites. He scoffed at legends. He laughed at shadows. But something about this mansion gnawed at him, something intangible and disturbing. Behind him, his producer, Carla, with fiery red hair and eyes full of mischief, adjusted the camera, ready to document this extraordinary night. "Are you sure about this, Thomas?" she asked, her voice betraying a note of concern. "This place, it's different. People say it's cursed." Thomas flashed a confident grin. "Curses, ghosts, inspectors are tricks of the mind, Carla. I'll prove it once again. This place will be just another debunked myth." The iron gates creaked open, and Thomas's footsteps echoed on the cobblestone path. As he approached the mansion, the air grew cold, and the scent of damp earth and ancient wood filled his nostrils. Carla followed, the camera's red recording light glowing ominously. "People say they hear voices, Thomas. Voices from the past. Voices are just echoes, reverberations of sound," he replied, his voice firm yet not entirely convincing. "There's nothing supernatural about that." They entered the grand hall, the door closing behind them with a thunderous bang. The mansion's interior was a labyrinth of shadows, the dim light casting eerie patterns on the worn-out wallpapers. Dust hung in the air, the taste of decay lingering on their tongues. They explored room after room, Thomas narrating for the camera, explaining away the creaks and moans of the building as mere physics. Hours passed, and the mansion seemed to accept Thomas's presence, lying still and silent, like a predator watching its prey. Until, from the depths of the mansion, a faint whisper began to materialize, a murmur that swirled through the hallways, gaining substance and form. Carla's eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Thomas paused, listening. The whisper was there, undeniable and strange. His heart quickened, but he shook his head. "It's just the wind." But as they ventured deeper, the whisper grew into a voice Thomas knew all too well. His own voice. It began to narrate events from his past, secrets he had never shared. His hands turned clammy, his rational mind grappling with the impossible. The camera trembled in Carla's grip as she witnessed his transformation from skeptic to believer. "What is this, Thomas? What's happening?" she asked, her voice breaking with fear. He stood, frozen, as the voice continued its relentless narration, his own deeds replaying before him, his mind spinning. He wanted to run, to escape this nightmarish reality, but he was drawn to it, captivated by his own echo from the beyond. "Carla, keep filming," he finally whispered, his voice hollow. "We're uncovering something real." As they delved further into the mansion, the air thick with dread and anticipation, they knew they were venturing into a realm where nightmares became tangible, where the boundaries of fear were shattered. The night had only begun. The echoes from beyond were calling, and Thomas was listening. The mansion's hallways twisted and turned like a maze, each room a repository of secrets and shadows. The voice, Thomas's own voice, echoed through the chambers, growing more intimate, more personal with each passing moment. Thomas's skin prickled with fear, a sensation he had not felt in years. The voice was no longer a whisper but a clear, articulate narrative of his life's most shameful deeds. The secrets spilled forth, filling the rooms with a dark resonance that seemed to breathe life into the very walls. Carla's face was ashen as she trailed behind Thomas, her camera capturing every horrifying revelation. "Thomas, what is this? How does it know?" she asked, her voice a mix of fascination and terror. Thomas's lips were dry, his mind reeling. "I don't know, Carla. I don't understand. He felt a strange connection to the voice, a pull that was both repulsive and irresistible. They continued their journey, the voice guiding them deeper into the mansion's heart. Room after room, the voice narrated events that only Thomas knew, his sins laid bare for Carla to hear. His betrayal of a childhood friend, his manipulation of a lover's trust, his abandonment of those who needed him most. The voice did not judge, it simply narrated, its tone cold and unfeeling. The mansion seemed to absorb the stories, the walls pulsating with a dark energy, the air thick with the scent of musty paper and rotting wood. The chandeliers swayed, casting ghostly shadows that danced and writhed, the wind howling through unseen crevices. Thomas's eyes were wild, his mind a whirlpool of confusion and terror. He felt naked, exposed, his very soul laid bare by the voice. "Who are you?" he finally cried out, his voice breaking. "What do you want from me?" The voice paused, a silence that was almost more terrifying than its words. Then it spoke, not to narrate, but to answer. "I am you, Thomas. I am your guilt, your shame, your fear. I am everything you have tried to hide." Thomas stumbled, his legs weak, his stomach churning. He leaned against a wall, its cold surface biting into his flesh, a sharp contrast to the feverish heat of his fear. Carla reached out, her hand trembling, her eyes filled with concern and confusion. "Thomas, we need to leave. This place is wrong. It's alive." But Thomas was entranced, locked in a battle with himself, with the voice. "No, Carla, we can't leave. Not yet. I need to understand. I need to know why." They pressed on, the voice leading them to a room at the mansion's core. A room filled with mirrors, each one reflecting Thomas's face, his terror, his guilt. The voice grew quiet, its narration shifting to a prophecy, a foretelling of a future event, a gruesome end that awaited Thomas. He stared into the mirrors, his own face twisted with horror, his reflection multiplied 1,000 times. The room spun, the mirrors reflecting not just his image but his soul. The voice's prophecy rang in his ears, a death knell that resonated through his very being. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the voice was not lying. He was haunted by his past, his present, and his future. The echoes from beyond had become a living nightmare, a torment that he could not escape. And as he stood in that room of mirrors, surrounded by his own guilt and fear, he realized that the mansion's curse was real, that the voices were not echoes but a truth he had to face. The night was far from over, and the darkness had only just begun to speak. The room of mirrors was a prison of reflections, each one a tormenting reminder of Thomas's sins, his failures, his guilt. His own voice, now silent, had been replaced by the deafening silence of self-realization. The echoes from the beyond had reached into his very soul, exposing him to a terror he had never known. Carla's hand on his shoulder was a lifeline, pulling him back from the brink of madness. Her eyes, wide with fear, searched his face for answers. "Thomas, what did it mean? What was it talking about? That prophecy, that ending. What does it all mean?" Thomas's breath came in ragged gasps, his mind still reeling from the voice's revelations. "I don't know, Carla. I don't know." His voice was hollow, defeated. They left the room of mirrors, but the images lingered, haunting Thomas's every step. The mansion had become a labyrinth of guilt, each hallway a path to another dark memory, each room a chamber of secrets. The air grew heavy, damp with the weight of the past. The very walls seemed to close in on them, the ceilings pressing down, the floors shifting beneath their feet. The mansion was alive, pulsating with a dark energy that fed on Thomas's fear. They wandered aimlessly, the once familiar layout now a twisted maze. Doors led to nowhere, hallways looped back on themselves, staircases ended in blank walls. Time lost all meaning, the minutes stretching into hours, the mansion refusing to release them from its grip. Carla's camera, once a tool of documentation, now sat forgotten, its red recording light a feeble glow in the darkness. Her face was pale, her body trembling, her mind unable to comprehend the nightmare they were trapped in. Thomas's rationality, once his greatest strength, had become his weakness. The voice had broken him, shattering his skepticism, leaving him lost and vulnerable. He stumbled, his legs weak, his body drenched in sweat. He leaned against a wall, its cold surface a stark contrast to the feverish heat of his fear. He closed his eyes, the darkness a welcome escape from the relentless torment of the mansion. But the darkness was not silent. Whispers filled his ears, the voices of his past, the echoes of his guilt. They taunted him, their words twisting into a chorus of condemnation, a symphony of shame. He opened his eyes, the mansion's twisted hallways stretching out before him, a never-ending journey into his own darkness. "Thomas, we need to find a way out." Carla's voice was desperate, her eyes filled with tears. "This place is feeding on you. It's using your guilt, your fear. We need to leave." But Thomas knew they could not leave, not yet. A voice had shown him a truth he could not ignore, a prophecy he had to face. "I can't, Carla. I can't leave. Not until I understand. Not until I face it." His voice was firm, determined. "Face what, Thomas? What are you talking about?" Carla's voice was pleading, her fear turning to frustration. "Myself," Thomas whispered, his voice barely audible. "I need to face myself." And with those words, he knew what he had to do. The mansion was not just a place of horror, it was a mirror, reflecting his own soul. The voice was not a ghost, it was his conscience. He had to navigate the labyrinth of guilt, confront his own demons, and find the truth hidden within the echoes from the beyond. The night was far from over, and the journey had only just begun. The mansion waited, its secrets yet to be revealed, its darkness yet to be explored. Thomas took a deep breath, his resolve strengthened, his fear replaced by determination. He was ready to face the darkness, to journey into the unknown, to confront the echoes from the beyond. A labyrinth of guilt awaited, and Thomas was ready to walk its twisted path. Thomas's determination was a beacon, guiding them through the mansion's twisted corridors. The walls no longer closed in, they opened, leading them deeper into the labyrinth of guilt. Carla's fear was replaced by curiosity, her camera once again alive, its lens capturing their journey into the unknown. The mansion seemed to sense Thomas's change, his willingness to confront his past. The dark energy that once fed on his fear now seemed to guide him, leading them to a door that stood slightly ajar, a faint light spilling from the cracks. They entered a room unlike any other in the mansion. It was a garden, but not one of life and beauty. It was a garden of regrets, each plant a twisted representation of Thomas's sins, each flower a bloom of guilt. The air was thick with the scent of decay, the floor damp with the tears of remorse. The plants reached out, their leaves like hands, their petals like mouths, whispering the secrets of Thomas's past. He walked among them, his face a mask of sorrow, his heart heavy with the weight of his regrets. He touched them, each one a memory, each one a pain that had never healed. The betrayal of his friend was a thorn bush, its spikes sharp and unyielding. The manipulation of his lover was a wilting rose, its beauty lost, its fragrance sour. The abandonment of those who needed him was a crawling vine, its tendrils suffocating, its grip unbreakable. Carla watched, her camera forgotten, her eyes filled with empathy. She saw Thomas's soul laid bare, his guilt a living thing, his regrets a garden of sorrow. He knelt, his body racked with sobs, his mind overwhelmed by the truth of his sins. He had hidden from them, buried them deep, but they had never died. They had grown, twisted and gnarled, a garden of regrets that had consumed his soul. Carla approached, her hand reaching out to comfort him. "Thomas, it's okay. We can leave now. You've faced it. You've seen it. It's time to go." But Thomas shook his head, his tears flowing freely, his voice choked with emotion. "No, Carla, I can't leave. Not yet. There's more. There's something else." He stood, his body trembling, his face pale. He looked around the garden, his eyes searching, his mind reaching for something just beyond his grasp. Then he saw it, a door hidden among the twisted plants, its wood old and weathered, its handle rusted and worn. He approached, his hand reaching for the handle, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that beyond that door lay the truth, the answer to the voice's prophecy, the key to his redemption. Carla followed, her fear replaced by determination. Her mind opened to the unknown. They opened the door, the light from the garden spilling into a room that held the essence of Thomas's soul. It was a room of mirrors, but not like the one before. These mirrors were clear, their surfaces clean and unblemished. They reflected not just his image, but his very being. He approached, his reflection staring back at him, his eyes filled with understanding, his heart open to forgiveness. The echoes from the beyond had led him here, to this place of self-discovery, to this garden of regrets. He was ready to face the truth, to confront the prophecy, to walk the path of redemption. The journey was far from over, and the darkness still held secrets, but Thomas knew that he was on the right path, guided by the echoes from the beyond, led by his own conscience. The Garden of Regrets was behind him, and the path to redemption lay ahead. The darkness beckoned, and Thomas was ready to follow. Beyond the Garden of Regrets, Thomas and Carla found themselves in a grand hall. This room was unlike any they had encountered before. The ceilings soared, adorned with ancient chandeliers that flickered with ghostly light. The walls were lined with ornate clocks of all shapes and sizes, their faces glowing softly, their hands ticking in unison. The very fabric of time seemed to hold sway in this room. The clocks were not just keepers of hours and minutes, they were guardians of destiny, their rhythmic ticks and talks weaving the very tapestry of fate. Thomas was drawn to a grand clock at the center of the room. Its wood was dark and polished, its face etched with symbols and runes that seemed to dance and shimmer. As he approached, he could feel its power, its pull, its connection to his very soul. He touched its surface, and the room came alive. The other clocks began to chime, their voices harmonizing in a haunting melody that resonated in the core of his being. Carla's hand went to her mouth, her eyes wide with wonder and awe. "Thomas, what is this place?" He turned, his face a mask of concentration, his mind reaching out to the clocks, to their wisdom, to their knowledge of time and fate. "It's the clockwork of fate, Carla. It's where our destinies are written, where our paths are laid out." He returned his attention to the grand clock, its face now a portal, its hands now guides. He saw his past, his present, his future. He saw the threads of his life, woven and intertwined, leading him to this very moment. The voice's prophecy was not just a warning, it was a revelation, a glimpse into the very mechanics of fate. His deeds, his sins, his regrets, they were not just memories. They were cogs in the machine, gears in the clockwork, pieces of a puzzle that only now began to make sense. He saw the connections, the patterns, the intricate dance of cause and effect. He understood that his journey was not just a path to redemption, it was a path to understanding, to enlightenment, to the very essence of his being. The room fell silent, the clock's chimes fading, their voices hushed. The grand clock's face returned to its normal state, its symbols and runes once again still and silent. Thomas stepped back, his mind reeling, his soul touched by the very fabric of fate. He looked at Carla, his eyes filled with wisdom, his heart filled with peace. "I understand now, Carla. I know what I have to do." Carla approached, her eyes searching his, her mind open to his revelation. "What is it, Thomas? What do you have to do?" He took her hand, his touch gentle, his voice calm. "I have to accept it, Carla. I have to embrace my fate, my destiny." The voice, the prophecy, the garden, the clocks, they were all guiding me, leading me to this moment. I have to face my end, my gruesome end, not with fear, but with understanding, with acceptance. Carla's eyes filled with tears, her body trembling. "But Thomas, that means..." He nodded, his face serene, his soul at peace. "Yes, Carla, it means I have to die. But it's not an end, it's a beginning. It's the final piece of the puzzle, the last gear in the clockwork. It's my destiny." They embraced, their bodies close, their hearts connected. The room was still, the clock silent, the very fabric of time holding its breath. The journey was almost over, the path almost complete. The echoes from the beyond had led Thomas to this moment, to this understanding, to this acceptance. He was ready to face his destiny, to embrace his fate, to become one with the clockwork of fate. The darkness still awaited, the final chapter still to be written, but Thomas knew that he was on the right path, guided by the echoes from the beyond, led by the clockwork of fate. The end was near, but it was not to be feared. It was to be embraced, to be understood, to be accepted. The clockwork of fate had spoken, and Thomas was ready to listen. The room, filled with its timeless echoes, had opened the door to understanding for Thomas. Now he found himself back in the familiar surroundings of his home. The journey with Carla through the nightmarish hallways and lessons of the past was over. All that remained was the inevitable confrontation with the destiny that had been foretold. His house seemed different now. The once comforting walls were tinged with the wisdom and weight of everything he had learned. He knew that his life was now on a set path, and there was an uncanny calm that settled over him as he recognized what he must do. Carla, strong yet emotionally overwrought, accompanied him. "Thomas, are you certain about this? Isn't there any other way?" Her voice broke, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. But Thomas was resolute, touched by an unseen hand guiding him to his destined conclusion. He smiled reassuringly. "Carla, we can't change what's meant to be, This is bigger than both of us." Together, they prepared for the night. The prophecy's fulfillment was at hand, and they both felt the approaching presence of something inescapable. As the evening wore on, Thomas could hear the whispers of his own voice again, now not as a taunting, eerie presence, but as a soft reminder of his fate's tapestry. It was a part of him, not something alien or otherworldly. A voice was his own soul speaking, and he was ready to listen. Hours turned into moments as the night wore on, and soon the two found themselves sitting, waiting. The room was filled with the sounds of the ticking clock and their own heartbeat, each second a drumbeat leading to the inevitable. Finally, as midnight approached, Thomas stood up, his body filled with a strange energy, a magnetic pull towards what was about to occur. He looked at Carla, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Thank you, Carla, for everything." She rushed to him, tears in her eyes, and they embraced, a long, meaningful connection that spoke volumes. Their lips met in a kiss filled with every emotion they had ever felt for one another. And then it was time. Thomas walked to the center of the room, his steps guided, his body ready. The air seemed to change, thickening with anticipation. The very fabric of reality seemed to wait with bated breath. There was a sudden, sharp sensation, a cold wind, a darkness descending. Thomas felt his body being lifted, suspended, his senses expanding. He was no longer just in the room. He was a part of everything. He saw his life, his choices, his mistakes, his triumphs. He saw the people he had touched, the lives he had changed. He saw Carla, her face a beacon of love and strength. And then he saw his end, not as something to be feared, but as a gateway, an opening to something greater. It was gruesome, as the prophecy had foretold, but it was not the end. It was a transformation, a metamorphosis. He felt no pain, no fear. He felt a release, an acceptance, a joy. He was fulfilling his destiny, embracing his fate. Carla watched, her face pale, her body trembling, but her soul understanding. She saw Thomas not as a lost, tragic figure, but as a fulfilled, complete being. The room returned to normal, the presence gone, the destiny fulfilled. Thomas's body lay on the floor, his face peaceful, his journey complete. Carla knelt beside him, her hand touching his face, her heart full of love, pride, and sorrow. She understood now. She understood everything. The echoes from the beyond had led Thomas to this moment, to this destiny. His life had been a lesson, a journey, a preparation for this final act. And now he was free. Free from guilt, free from fear, free from the constraints of mortality. He had embraced his destiny, and in doing so, had become something greater, something eternal, something beyond. In the silence of the room, in the aftermath of destiny's embrace, Carla felt a peace, a contentment, a connection to something profound. Thomas's voice was no longer an echo from the beyond. It was a whisper in her soul, a reminder that life is a journey, destiny is a path, and love is the key to understanding it all. She left the room, her heart heavy but her spirit uplifted, knowing that Thomas was not gone. He was a part of everything now, a part of the clockwork of fate, a part of the eternal dance of life and death. The echoes from the beyond had spoken, and she had listened. She had learned. She had loved. And in the embrace of destiny, she had found peace. The echoes have faded, and destiny's dance has come to its chilling conclusion. Thank you, fearless listeners, for venturing into the unknown with us on our scary stories. Remember, the shadows we explored together tonight linger long after the tale is told. Thomas's journey may be over, but the questions and reflections it inspired remain. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers in the dark, and may your nightmares be filled with intrigue and wonder. This is our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.